What's up, Kingdom of Rock? This is Matt Gibson here with my co-host, the Michael Molenda, and our awesome guest today, Mike Scala. How's it going, Mike?
How's it going, guys? What's up? Great to see you.
Good. Mike is a awesome songwriter, musician, producer, philanthropist. And one of the reasons we wanted to have him on this show is because he does so much philanthropy with his music, and he kind of merges all of that stuff together to make him into the person that he is, and I think it's really interesting, some of the things Mike's doing out there in the world in trying to make the world a better place, not only with his music but with his philanthropy. And he's kind of got a little thing where he ties it all together in a really cool way, and I think you guys are going to benefit from that. So Mike, welcome to the show. How are you doing today, man?
Yeah, thank you guys. Yeah, I'm well. It's another beautiful day. I'm alive. You know what I mean? So
that's kind of how I answer the phone these days. Hey, it's Mike. I'm still alive.
I'm still alive. Still alive. Yeah. Well, I mean, considering the state of the world right now, I mean, it's wild. It's wild right now. There's a lot of crazy things happening, as you guys know, and I think we're all well aware of a lot of things and shifts and changes happening. But you just have to just be positive about it all. And I try to stay away from the news. I don't like to watch the news or anything. It's just the same thing recycled. So I think
Well, I think that you're for philanthropy. You have a foundation, which you should probably let our readers or our viewers know about. And but also, I just think it's amazing how you get to the point where anybody who wants to help out. It just seems so huge. Like you're committed to helping youth, and it's like, well, how do you do that, and how do you get started, and how do you even make it something more than just having a benefit and giving kids $100 to have pizza? I mean, what you've been able to do with your outreach is amazing. So I'm just curious about how you were able to get to that point.
I mean, I think the key is just doing it. I mean, I know that sounds, very, but I mean, I don't know any CEO or people that I've worked with or anything that they're the head of this and the head of that. I mean, I don't know any of them that said that I have it all figured out, right? Like none of them. Because, I'm always asking people, kind of trying to, I guess I'm always in the act of learning, right? Like that's key. And I think that the moment that you think that you know all the things about whatever it is, like I don't really believe in experts, for example. I think that ties into your question in that, again, the moment that you think that you know all things, that's the moment when I feel that you stop living, to be honest, because, there's so many things that exist far beyond our understanding, right? Atoms, right? We didn't even know that atoms existed until some scientists discovered them, right? And otherwise it's not visible, right? So how did they find that? They just did it. They just figured it out. They just tried a bunch of things and saw what worked, saw what didn't work. And then one day they were like, oh, wow, okay, here's this thing that we found, So I think that's applicable to all, to everything, to music, to business, to wanting to do good in the world, like all the things. It's like just being in a constant state of learning and, just never acting as if you know all the things. That's important.
Yeah, what led you to actually start your foundation? What were some of the key points that led to that?
Well, we were touring pretty heavily from about 2010 till 2018. I was just, fresh out of high school, like going into college, started hitting the, college circuit pretty heavily. And, we were touring in all these cities and all these places anyway. So I just kind of approached the team and said, listen, here's what I'm thinking. I'd like to donate and, really less donate, more like, let's find a way to fuse, if we're going to be in these places, let's find a way to fuse a way to give back that's also going to be meaningful for the team and everyone involved too. And now the other side of the thing is that's not easy to do, right? Because that means that people have to take pay cuts. That means that like everybody has to be, in that place of wanting to be of service. And that means that, but you know, we were all friends. We were like a family.
So let me get this straight. You guys are on tour, and you're taking your social impact, you know, trying to help the communities that you are doing music in. Is that what I'm hearing?
Correct. Yeah. So we were stopped. Apologies for, you know, Michael, I'm trying to, there's a lot that happens, so you'll have to excuse me and help me to kind of.
And also, what band were you on tour with when you started this? Was this your own thing, or were you with somebody else?
Correct. Yeah, I was headlining the shows. Yeah, so it was as my solo career. Yeah.
Okay.
So you know, when we did that, you know, in every city that we were going to, we just, again, I have a whole process that we did. Ran like a finely tuned machine. As soon as we got to every city, everyone knew what to do, where to go, how to go about it, and then we come back together and we take 30% of every show and donate it back into the community in terms of things, you know, food, clothing, supplies, whatever we could. It started out that way. That was, you know, I just said, hey, I have an idea. Let's just do it. Let's try. Okay. And we happened to be very effective at it, thankfully. So we were able to help a lot of people on that first big one, and then that kind of led to everything else.
So like in today's world of actually possibly starving artists, you know, like with all the COVID and everything shut down and stuff, like giving money, giving your profits back to people is as beautiful as that is. I can see how a lot of people would be like, oh man, I can't afford to do that, right?
Sure.
So what do you say to somebody that's thinking like that from your experiences?
Well, that's the thing, right? Is like not everything needs to come in the form of money, right? You know, the biggest thing that I ask when somebody's so passionate about something and they're like, you know, I really want to change this thing, but I don't have access to resource. I don't have this, or I don't have that, you know, kind of backpedal a bit and like reverse engineer the thing, right? It's like, okay, I want to get here. You want to do that thing. Maybe you can't do that thing, but there's 5 other things tied to it, right? That you can do that just can come in the form of donating your time, you know? And I think that comes back to anyone that has a voice and is trying to be proactive, right? You know, we can have a lot of opinions, right? But if those opinions aren't backed up by action, then it's just air, right? So, you know, the biggest question I ask people coming back to that is when they're passionate about something, say, I want to do this and this needs to change, you know, that needs to happen, this needs to happen. I ask them, okay, great. Well, what are you doing about it? And more often than not, the answer is, well, it's not up to me, right? Like, there's nothing I can do about it. And it's like, well, you know, it's deeper, going deeper into that. You have to take ownership of that and do something, right?
Yeah, it's like, what? Oh yeah, we can't do anything about this. Watch this, right? And you just go do it. And I love that. I think so many people, especially artists, but like everyone struggles with this. Like,
absolutely, yeah.
It's, you know, we look to our governments to kind of solve problems for us a lot of times, and sometimes that's a decent tool to use, you know, to make it easier to solve problems or whatever. But like, I think people, like what you're saying, people don't think about the incredible power they have to just go out and transform their communities, their country, the world, like just by saying, you know what, I'm not gonna, you know, it's cool to vote and everything, and I'm not saying that's bad or anything, but like, what if I just got a bunch of people together and we solved the homeless problem? Like, why not? Like, you know what I'm saying? It's like, start your own revolution to change the world and make it better. And I love that kind of spirit behind what you're saying there, because people just don't realize how special they are and how much influence and power they can exercise in the world just by themselves, trying to do something good.
Well, I think I know that you said there was kind of your family out on tour with you when you started this initiative, Mike, but you also mentioned that people had to take less money. So did you find that you had to kind of turn yourself into an evangelist for helping people to get people on board, or did they pretty much go like, oh, Mike, that's awesome. Yeah, of course we should do that. Here's 20% of my earnings. Take it.
Well, I think that there's a high level of trust, right? There's a high level of trust and faith in our ability to move together, right? And they trusted me as I got us to that point, right? Like I had to do the work to get this. You know, in the end of the day, something goes wrong, my name's on the board, right? It's like, you know, so in essence, everything always falls on you when you're the CEO of your own endeavor, right? Yeah. So, but I never operated that way, right? It was never about me, ever. It was about we. So I think when that conversation happened, you know, it wasn't a difficult one. People were like, yeah, Mike, I'm down. Like, you know, you lead, we'll come along. Like, we're down. Like, let us know how we can help. And, you know, I always allowed them to take on different roles. I always, you know, again, it was never about, it never is about me. Okay. Just because my name's up there or whatever, you know, I'm just a piece of the machine that's behind that. Right. Like I couldn't have done half of what I did if it wasn't for the people I was working with. Like, there's no way. Like, you know,
it's refreshing to hear those words come out of your mouth, because I think the public might look at whether you're an actor or a musician or whatever, that, you know, we are thinking about ourselves, that, you know, it is an I scenario rather than a we scenario. When we run our companies, because, you know, we've got big egos and we want to be the headliner and all that kind of stuff. So it's interesting to hear you so committed to the we.
It's important. I mean, you know, look, I mean, we grow up to learn that, right? Like it's a very individualistic approach when, you know, if you take a look at the core of humans, like we're tribal, right? Like we need each other. Like everything kind of operates that way. And that word turns some people off, right? When you use that word, but you know, just look up the definition of it and it's what humans are, right? I always just look at the facts, right? I try to keep my opinion out of all things. You know, I just take a look at the facts and history and what we've done, how we've operated, and then go off of that to see how we can shift the narrative of what's currently going on. And generally the only way to do that is to, a lot of times lead by example. And what I mean by that is like, if you're passionate about a thing, then go out and do it. And if other people around you are passionate about that, then you'll empower them to say, oh, wait a second, like they can do that. Like I can do that too. You know what? Like, let me try, you know, and then that's how that thing kind of snowballs, if that makes sense, you know. And some people take the lead by example thing in a different way. So I just wanted to clarify what that meant, you know, in terms of someone's own world, you know.
Yeah. Dude. So, okay. So let me kind of frame this up here. So you're on tour with your band, you're coming into a city, you guys are taking some of your money and you're putting it back in the community, right? And then over the whole course of the tour, I'm sure you did a lot of different things with that money, right?
Correct.
What are some things that you were able to do while you're on tour, and you're giving back to the communities?
Sure, yeah. Give some concrete examples, absolutely. So, you know, I think one of the most interesting projects was we were on tour in Australia on that side of the world, and a cyclone hit Fiji while we were out there.
Oh, wow.
And it was a pretty wild scenario. And I kind of looked at my tour manager, Rich, and I was just like, you know, you knew right away, you know, I was like on the laptop, you know, we were, you know, in the hotel, you know, like getting everything ready for the show. And just like the news came up and I just turned the laptop around towards him. And he just is like, he's like, we're going to Fiji, aren't we? I was like, yep. So, you know, we kind of tapped into some of our network and resources, and yeah, ended up getting like a whole supply chain going, like bringing supplies through the jungle and like hopping on boats and the whole 9 yards and just getting out there and doing it. And, you know, we had a contact with a shipping company that ended up dropping us some supplies into Nandi. And then we organized those supplies and just started our operation and just went to work. You know, dipped into whatever contacts we had and just, you know, had a contact on the ground with one of the locals and then just said, you know, look, we're here to help. And, you know, when you're a band doing that, like it's very non-threatening, right? It's like, you know, not an institution. We're not somebody trying to come in, trying to, you know, the whole savior thing. We're like, hey, like, you know, we're just you tell us what to do. Like, this is what we have, you know?
Trying to think of like major artists that have kind of used this model of kind of moving out into the world with their art and helping that kind of thing. And I really, Michael Jackson comes to mind. I remember when I was growing up, you know, when Michael would be out on tour, he would visit all the burn units and places, you know, children's hospitals of, you know, kids that were like dying of, you know, terrible diseases and things like that. And did a lot of philanthropy that way. And, you know, I think it's really like art is beauty and but art is also like, it's a tool, you know, and it's like when we take our art out into the world as an artist and we, you know, we're trying to essentially heal little parts of the human condition, you know, like comedians do, you know, they make jokes about things that nobody wants to talk about. And, you know, artists are out there kind of being shaman out in the musical world, you know, but you're also kind of doing it with your hands out in the community. Like what was the result of all of this stuff coming together, like with your team and yourself? Like what did it manifest, like that chunk of time?
It manifested projects and programs, you know, executed and out into the world across 17 countries. I mean, that's what manifested, you know. And you know, I think going back to your question earlier, right, like everyone always goes back to like the how, right? Like, well, if I don't have this, like how do I do that? And you know, this may be a bit, you know, off for some people, you know, and I preface that, you know, it may resonate, it may not. In the end of the day, we will all come to this conclusion at some point in our life. Some don't find this conclusion until later in their life when they're much, much, much older and it might be too late. So I challenge whoever's listening or watching to just, if you haven't thought about it, maybe you have, you know, who knows, but it all comes back to self, right? Like self-work. Right? And finding ways to be better every day, finding ways to, and in terms of like, you know, kindness to yourself and like dropping into finding out like what it is that you really want in life, like journaling, like just doing the inner work before you do the outer work. Because I'm sure we've all had situations where like some crazy opportunity or thing that we needed fell from the sky, right? And like, you don't know, there's no way you could have planned it. There's no way you could have, it just happened. You just like, wow, like that's good luck, right? Or people define it however, you know, it depends, right? So I guess my point of that is like a big part of this work of me as an artist, right? And then Mike as like a business person, and then Mike as a philanthropist, I guess, you know, right? Those three avenues, like it all forms back to that came from me as a vessel, essentially, right? Like as it came through me, right? So, you know, with that said, it was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, right? Like there's many nights where I only slept, you know, 2 hours a night for weeks on end, you know, really difficult being in 5 cities at one time. You know, I had to keep my mental health about me, and then you're out in the world doing all these things. And sometimes we were in war zones seeing really, really rough, difficult things, you know, and if you don't have yourself together, you know, there's no way you're going to be able to manage that. Right. So if you want to translate out into the world, you got to translate your own world. You know, that's just, you know, that may resonate, may not, you know, I don't know, but that's me, I guess, you know.
Well, and you know, in all these aspects you're talking about, I'm marveling at your organizational skills, you know, and your own personal grit and all that kind of stuff. So I'm wondering on the musical side of things, where COVID has kind of shut us down, a lot of musicians are scrambling, trying to figure out how to make any revenue at all. I mean, I've got, you know, personal friends that were in big bands doing, whether they were doing keyboards or sound mixing, they're gardeners now. You know, they're just trying to figure out a way to put food on the table. But have you, I imagine you probably have a plan just knowing how you approach things. So for this year and your musical career, do you have anything that you'd be willing to share that might help another musician out there realize that, oh, I don't have to stop. I can plan to do this instead of that?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, it's a great opportunity to create content, right? It's a great opportunity to, I mean, go back to what I said before. It's a great opportunity to sit with yourself, right? And face yourself. Because I think in a lot of what a lot of musicians and artists struggle with is mental health, right? Because we see the world, and this is like fact, right? Like, again, I'm going to facts like science, right? Like, it's been proven that we see the world through different eyes in a way, right? Simplest way to put it, right? The perspective, you ask someone to describe, who's an artist, you ask them to describe a landscape, and they're going to describe that landscape completely different than someone maybe who's in tech or has more of a, like an engineer type mind, right? So there are a lot of things that I think musicians and artists struggle with. I'm no different. Like, I struggle with those things too, just like anyone else, but the key is having access to the tools for that. And I think this is a great time for people to find their tools, right? Like, I can take a hammer, right, and hand it to you, right? And say, okay, cool. Like, this is called the hammer, right? Here's how you use it, right? Here's the nail, right? Okay, you can take the hammer and go like this, boom, 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 boom. Okay, cool. Maybe for somebody that's just like sitting for 5 minutes a day when you wake up, right? Just wake up, make your bed, always make your bed. It sounds like something small, but always make your bed, because that completes the sleep process, right? For your mind mentally, and allows you to start the day. I'm just sharing some tools now, right? Like practical application rather than just talking.
I can relate to what you're saying about sleep in particular, because like I've been super busy the last few days, and I haven't made my bed 2 days in a row. And it's like I'm not right. It's like my body doesn't know when to go to sleep. It totally can relate to that.
It's very simple. It's very simple. But again, this is all human psychology stuff, right? And this is like thousands of years of human trials, right? Some people have just figured some things out. So, sitting 5 minutes a day is the hammer, for example, right?
Yeah.
And I can hand you that hammer and I can say, cool, and then one day, that's a hammer. One day you're carrying groceries, you have the hammer in your hand, whatever, you're coming through the door, you're holding the door open with your leg, trying to make it work to get through and whatever. Then you realize you have a hammer and you stick it in the door to hold the door open, right? Because maybe the alarm's going to go off if it shuts or something happens, whatever. That one hammer now has a different application, right? So you can take tools and transform them to make them your own. So anyone that says like there's one way to do this, or there's one way to tackle mental health, or there's one way to meditate, or there's one way to do whatever, has no idea what they're talking about, right? Because every human is different.
Yeah.
So I think now is a good time for people to take a look at themselves, find the tools that work for them. Journaling is great every single day. Again, this may not seem like it relates to the thing, right? And I think that's part of the issue. It may not seem like it relates to execution effectively out into the world, or being a good artist and being a good songwriter, or being a good business person, but it all applies. And I think that's where we have to take our vision like this and we have to make it go like this, right? You got to take those blinders away, because what do you have to lose? What is it? 15-minute time investment? Make your bed, wake up, journal, sit for 5 minutes, start there, and that will all cross over into all the things you want to do out into the world. As abstract and crazy as it sounds, do it for a month and message me and tell me that your life hasn't changed, because it will.
Yeah. Well, I love that. Go ahead, Mike.
Interesting. Matt and I have tried to get musicians through COVID, survive through COVID, but also, as you kind of mentioned, think differently about stuff. Like, don't just put your music on Spotify, and we know that's not going to pay your rent or your mortgage. But if you're going to constantly follow that line, it's kind of like that classic, definition of insanity. And yet, I don't know whether it's fear or an unwillingness to see the world as it is today, but there's so many peers that I think we all have. It's just, no, I write a song this way. I put my music out this way, and it's going to happen, man. I just know it is. But there's no way that they're going to see a return on that. And it's so sad. And I think what you said about just opening up your eyes, it's necessary. But why do you think so many well, let's just focus on musicians for now. So many musicians just always seem to go in the same corral and, conform, 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 conform. There's you can hit a seminar anywhere you want about how to monetize your music career. It's going to tell you the same tired old stuff that they told me in 1978, except different technology, same concept.
That's a great question. I think, coming back to, I'm a very solution-based person. Like, I think it's great to talk abstract, but I like to give tools, like practical things, right? And like practical ways to tackle these things. And, coming back to that, like just morning routine that you can create for yourself, right? What that's going to give you is a better sense of clarity. And when you have a better sense of clarity, you can deal with some of the chatter that happens in the mind much better. And you could also see things in a different way where you can create more opportunities for yourself too. Maybe in line with music, maybe outside of music, maybe getting yourself off of that hamster wheel kind of, as you're saying, right? The same cycle, right? The reason why that cycle happens is because as creatives, we especially get habitual, right? Like, we need a certain vibe. We have to have our specific tea. We have to, like, there's that thing about us, right? That I think all artists can kind of resonate with. And that seems like a really small thing, but that applies to all things, right? That if a song isn't a certain way, or it's not this, or it's not that, then it's just not. And that's not saying yes to life, really, right? That's a thing that you created. It came out of you. So therefore it's part of you, right? So obviously there must have been something in your body that you must have resonated with that you then created. So to get out of that hamster wheel, you need to create clarity. Without clarity, that hamster wheel continues and it'll torment you day and night. A lot of artists struggle with it. Depression, anxiety, it's the chatter of the mind, right? So
totally, dude.
I'm going to suggest a specific tool right now that I think will be very helpful. And I'm not one to endorse anyone's book or whatever like that or whatever. These are just practical, again, tools that are out there. There's a book called The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. I think every artist or human being should read that because it'll raise your sense of self-awareness in a way that, like, I've read the book many times throughout my life, and every single time it's different. And that's what's cool about it. And it deals with exactly what you asked, Michael, in many ways. And it also applies, the concepts are very, very applicable to the real world. Because it's great to live up here and have experiences and sit there and meditate or relax or whatever it is. But if that's not going to translate to growth, then all you're doing is just creating a sense of relaxation, which serves its purpose, but it's not going to move you forward.
Awesome point.
Yeah.
It also just reminded me when you were talking too about habit and comfort levels. Is once again the genius of David Bowie, where I think with Scary Monsters, he told the drummer he was going to play bass and the bassist was going to play guitar, and just kind of forcing them to give up their comfort zones to write. Well, he wrote the songs, but to be able to play parts that were different and weird. And, I wasn't in the studio with them, but I don't know how much actually came out of it. But I think that exercise is, valuable to kind of trip yourself up occasionally.
Yeah, it's important. I mean, look, you have to break the cycle. And that goes for musicians, again, anyone in any field or anything like that. I think that what musicians don't realize is how powerful that they have a platform to use. How powerful the tools that they have can be used through their platform, and that they actually have a platform to use. All right, there's the tools part, and then there's once the tools and the platform is built, is utilizing that. Right. Mm-hmm. So I want to come back to the point of musicians viewing the word responsibility in a different way. Responsibility means the ability to respond. So why is that important in relation to creation? Why is that important in relation to business, into your business, right? Because every musician is there. They need to start thinking like a CEO. Like, you're the CEO of your brand. You're the CEO of your company. You need to educate yourself. You need to get out there and do whatever it is that you want to do. And it's not going to be easy and it's not going to be simple. But when you get more of that clarity and you have more of an ability to respond, right, then you have a better way to move through the world, and more opportunities will come. The money will come. The resources will come. But again, like, no matter what, it comes back to self. It comes back to self. And I know this is probably like not what we expected to talk about today. It was like, some sense of, spirituality or whatever you want to call it. Everyone has a different word for it. It doesn't matter what you call it. The point is that it exists and it's real. And there's a reason why things have been done for thousands of years, meditation being one of them. Chances are it probably does something, right? So again, I just look at the facts, look at what's available, and how do you apply it?
You prompted me to think about a quote by Grant Cardone where he says, being broke is hard, making money is hard. Choose your hard. So he's specifically talking about the pursuit of money in that quote, right? You could apply that to anything.
Yeah.
Hey, Matt, you might want to tell people who Grant Cardone is, who might not know.
Yeah, he's an author. He's kind of like a success guy, like kind of the Tony Robbins type vein, but he's more focused on sales. That's kind of his expertise. He wrote a book called The 10X Factor. He's one of my mentors. But I mean, the whole concept though of everybody is kind of, a lot of musicians we talk to are just kind of stuck in the system. And I kind of talk about the music business jokingly, like, hey, there's a 50-gallon barrel full of hamsters, musicians, right? And they're packed into this barrel. That's called the music industry, right? And we're all stacked on top of each other, right? And so somebody's got money, dangles a Cheeto above the barrel, and we're willing to chew each other's arms and legs off just to get to that Cheeto, right? And it's like desperation, right? Meanwhile, I've learned that there's a bag of Cheetos over here that nobody's paying attention to. It's a whole bag of Cheetos. I'm sitting there eating, getting fat off of Cheetos, got orange stuff all over my face and my fingers. And I'm just a happy little hamster, and I make my own mistakes, like in the podcast world or in, working with neural tunes and neuroscience and helping people that way. And like all of the different things that we do with Kingdom of Rock. So it's kind of like I don't even have an album out, and I'm becoming pretty well known in the music industry right now. And it's because I'm helping people. It's because I'm looking for problems to solve. It's because I'm putting myself out there. But like a lot of people, the people that are still in this barrel, they just don't want to admit that this is not the only way to do it, and they use it as an excuse to fail and not get back up again. And so what would you
just get back to you for a second, Mike, is you've also taken the path where everybody else was, becoming a good songwriter, dealing with the industry as it is, or as it has been in the past. And what as you took that journey, what was one of the epiphanies where you realized that, okay, 1 million people are trying to do the same thing I'm trying to do in the same industry that everybody's trying to do it in. This is what propelled me forward.
Comparison.
You have a unique perspective about that because you've kind of done it your own way. You've also done it through the industry.
I'll say one line, and that's, comparison is the killer of joy. Theodore Roosevelt. Right?
Yeah.
One of the people I look up to, Theodore Roosevelt, Nelson Mandela, there's plenty, in terms of Marcus Aurelius. There's, I try to also like educate myself deeply as much as possible. I read a lot, I guess, and my point is like being hungry for that knowledge and being hungry to learn is what led me to being able to navigate the industry and being the CEO of my own company, right? And having a clear vision and knowing that there's space for everything, right? That's the tough part, right? We've all had that thing where you hear something, on Sirius, or you hear something on, a track on the radio or something, or you know, whatever on Spotify is streamed. It's got like, you know, 500 million streams, and you're like, how did that song like get there, right? Like, we've all had that point, you know, where it's like, I mean, the music quality of it, let's say, is debatable, right? You know, but again, that's opinion, that's subjective. The reason why I mention that is because that's subjective. You can't do that, right?
Yes.
So
Right.
that's the key. You can't compare yourself to the thing that's out there and then try to shift yourself. You know, everyone's always trying to stay current, right? You know,
Right.
oh, like, you know, your production's got to change. This has got to change. That's got to change. Like, there's room for everything right now. Like, especially right now, like, music doesn't know what it wants to do. You know, a lot of the great records have been made, right? The timeless records have been made, right? So what's next, right? Nobody knows what's next. So I think the way to navigate the industry and the way to do that and translate things to action and out in the world is, you know, a lot of people say it, and it's cliche, and I'll say it and then I'll go deeper, which is like, you know, stay true to your art. Like, if that's the thing you feel you're supposed to do it. Find a way, you know, and then deeper within that, instead of just saying, oh yeah, do it. Yeah, that's easy for you to say, blah, 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 right? Well, you're creative, right? Get creative, right? Take a look at all the resources that are available at the touch of your fingers, right? Like, start by the lowest hanging fruit, whatever that is, right? And again, be the CEO of your own company, right? We need to start thinking more like business people, right? That's the reason why artists, unfortunately, aren't respected among the business community.
Can you explain that, Mike? Like, what do you mean when you say be the own CEO of your company? Because a lot of artists, they don't really think of it that way.
Right.
How would you explain that?
So understand publishing, understand licensing, you know, understand some level of production, like teach yourself an instrument, get educated on the business side of how labels work, you know, how, you know, you could also leverage debt like a label would and apply that to the real world and take out something from the bank at a low interest. Like, there's so many ways to, I'm not suggesting that. I'm not suggesting you put yourself in debt. All I'm saying is that, like, there are different ways to go about it. You don't need to look for the labels. And, you know, trust me, if the labels want you, they'll find you. Like, if a manager wants to work with you, the manager will come to you. Trust me. Like, you don't want to be out there hunting. Be proactive, but, you know, get yourself to a place where you have enough to offer anyone that comes and works with you, not the other way around, because that's how artists get trapped, right?
Yep.
Then you don't understand the business. You know, some manager or whatever is shaving extra off the top. Then, because think about it, right? You have your attorney's fees, right? You have your management fees, then you have the agent. Before you know it, 40% of your gross is gone. Then you have expenses, right? Then that leaves you down to under 50 and 45. Right, so then you have to pay certain people. Maybe there's a publicist. So then you're looking at dealing and working with maybe 35% of your gross income, right? How do you then leverage that to be sustainable? Well, the way that you do that is to educate yourself on all these parts and see what you need and what you don't need, what you can do yourself. And I don't recommend doing all the things, right? You know, like, but educating yourself on all the things is important so that you know when the right person comes, what to expect, what they should be doing. Like, do your own PR, do your own marketing, like hustle, like spend 20 hours a day for the next 2 years, if that's what it takes to learn it, so that you know when the opportunity comes, whether it's a good fit or not. Like, that's the key. That's what being the CEO of your own company is. Understanding how to budget, you know, understanding how to invest. You know, invest in yourself, invest in other endeavors. You know, I have 4 companies. Like, you know, like it's there's ways to do it, right? So it's you have to think outside the box. And I know one of the things I'm trying to change in terms of, or inspire. I don't like the word change. Excuse me. One of the things I'm trying to inspire is getting more, you know, artists to think like business people, so that we can be almost leveraged and utilized more effectively in our partnerships with, you know, influencers is a big thing now, right? Like, you know, a lot of people like, Mike, you have a decent following, like you're this, you're that. It's like, yeah, okay, great. But like, how am I using that platform? Like, I'm translating that into the world yes, for music,
Mhm.
and also for the greater good of a thing, right? For something. I'm thinking beyond myself. And that's also being a good CEO, is thinking beyond yourself, thinking about your team. Who's your team? How do you take care of your team? You know, it takes a village. You know,
How do
Rome
you
wasn't built in a day.
how do you get a team? Let's say you're a solo artist and you're
Mhm.
trying, to get more serious about your music career. You obviously can't do everything if you do everything that you could do. How do
I,
you
Matt,
when? Go ahead, Mike.
I actually have to pop off. I'm so sorry, Mike. I got, but what you just said in that last speech was just unbelievable, and I hope that everybody who's listening takes that to heart, because I mean that is the whole deal. I mean, we've been in the music business long enough where I kind of had this mantra about everybody's full of shit because everybody thinks they know something, but they don't do the homework for it. They don't really know. And what you said about actually letting go of your ego and letting go of anything except for facts and how to get stuff done, I just think it's so valuable. And you said it so beautifully. So thank you so much for that.
No worries. Well, look, thank you for having me. And, I hope that some of this was valuable and helpful. And,
Well, I'll stay on with you. I just have to say goodbye for now.
yeah, no
Yeah,
problem.
Mike got to cut out like a few minutes early because he's got another appointment he's got to go
Okay.
to.
Take care, Mike. Thanks again.
Pleasure.
All right. So, all right. Well, see you later, Mike. Or Mike, Molenda. So, do you remember the question I was asking you? I can't remember what it was. We were talking about. Oh yeah. So you're a solo artist, and you've got some good music. You go out and you do shows and everything, but you want to you'd like to be in front of some more people and help some more people with your art. Maybe go out into the community like you're talking about and do some philanthropy while you're out and about. Like, how do you build a team that works? Like, do you just get your friends and then try to help everybody get on the same page, or do you try to be surgical precision about it and like the right person and you just got to wait, like how do you view like building a team and adding members to your family, so to speak?
Trial and error. Nothing hurts from trying, right? Definitely start with friends. I mean, that's the best way to go. Some people say mixing business and friends is not good, and yes, there's an element of that, of course. At the same time, you got to start somewhere. So, like, maybe your friends provide that initial support, and then you branch off, right? You just approach them and say, hey, like, I really need some help for the next 3 months. Like, would you guys be down to help? Very informal commitment. Like, start there. Also remember, like, all the things that you hate doing or don't like doing, right? There's always somebody that loves doing something that you don't like doing. And that's really important to remember, right? So don't try to be good at something that you're not, or try to do things that are tedious or like hurt your soul in a way, right? You're going to have to do some of that no matter what, right?
Yeah.
All I'm saying is that doesn't need to be your MO, right? It doesn't need to be like day and night that that's the thing that you're doing and you're ripping your hair out every day for a year, right?
Yeah, you
So,
for 4 hours before you go to bed at night, every night answering personal DMs from people or something, you're just like, oh my gosh, but that might be your thing too. So, like whatever it is that you're good at, definitely you want to do as much of that as you can, because you're going to be the rock star at it, and then if you suck, it's like, I hate putting out social media content. Like I like the result of it, but I don't want to be the guy that does it,
Yeah.
And it's like, that's the once we get some more money rolling in here, that's the first thing that I'm getting. I'm hiring somebody in that department, But when you hire somebody though, is it like you're spending money, how do you said trial and error, right? And I'm sure there's horror stories and we don't need to talk about those, but like,
so how do you justify?
Yeah, I'm just trying to like give tools to people. Like, how do you know that this is probably a good decision based on your experience with getting people in your life?
Look at certain things and treat them as an investment, right? Another thing too is like a lot of things are tax write-offs, right, as well for your business, right? So if you try something and it doesn't work, it doesn't mean you lost that funding, It doesn't mean that you lost that. It's just, it's a write-off, right? And that's another thing to educate yourself on, like, be smart about, like, don't get yourself in trouble by like claiming the wrong things, or like, don't, be mindful of the tax structures, learn them, how to make them work for you, how to look, all these big companies and lots of people are benefiting it from it. Why shouldn't you figure out how to learn to benefit from it? That's why it's there, right? Work within the parameters of the law and what's available, and figure out a way to make that work for you, so that when something like that does happen, okay, that was an investment, it's a write-off. I didn't lose that money technically, right? It's a write-off for my business. And that also comes by doing, right? You learn over time, like, what's best for you, where to go, where to look, the types of personalities you want to work with. And at the start, it's difficult, yeah, but I mean, you get the hang of it pretty quick, especially when, again, it's your business, right? And another thing too is, like, all that is, look, I also just want to make the point too, like, it was hard work. Like, it was hard work. It was not easy. A lot of people might think, okay, yeah, Mike, okay, like, you make it look easy or whatever, or like, yeah, you're out there, but like, I mean, I work my tail off, man. Like, for lack of better words, like, I don't know if there's cursing allowed on here, so I'm just,
Jerry, let it rip, bro.
Yeah, man. Well, whatever. Work my ass off. It's day and night. I'm always working all the time, and I create space for myself to relax and everything, of course, and stay grounded. But like, like, it's, you got to keep your work ethic high, however that is. Things aren't just gonna happen for you.
So you say this strange word or term, work ethic, right? I gotta tell you, I've met a lot of complaining artists that are complaining about how hard it is. That, in my opinion, of doing 20 years in the military, I don't think they work that hard. And I kind of like, it almost makes me cringe when I hear people complain, and they're just like partying too much and they're not taking their career seriously. Like, what would you say to somebody that's just kind of like squandering it like that and just blowing it? Like, how, obviously we all go through that as artists. That's part of the journey. What did it take for you to kind of to go, what, work ethic is a really important thing and I'm going to crank it up, or were you always that way?
I mean, for my journey, I mean, I was always driven by passion. I was passionate about making good music, and it's because, for whatever reason, I guess made good music, I was able to go and do these things, right? That was the enabler, right? So like, it does come down to your craft. It does come down to the product, whatever that is, right? For any business, right? Including as an artist and musician, right? Because, and thinking like an entrepreneur, I mean, that's, when I started doing music, I wasn't just thinking about music, I was thinking about, how can I get it to a place where this can support me? And then how can I get to a place where I can leverage this for other opportunities, and yes, give back to the world, and also create a world for myself that I wanted to create, right? That can support me through that journey too. So I think, as far as like, if someone is stuck there, in that kind of mode of like, like, I'm trying, this sucks, this, that, I would say, take the focus again back to self, right? Like, it's really easy to go, oh, because of this thing, this is happening, or because of this person, like, I didn't get that opportunity because X. It's like, that's great. And let's like stop looking there and start looking at yourself, right?
No, dude, like, the moment my life changed forever was the moment that I decided that everything in my life is my fault. I don't mean that stuff doesn't happen to me that I would rather not happen and that I didn't instigate, right? But like, I've decided that I'm going to view everything that happens in my life as my fault, in the sense of, I'm the only one that can fix my life. I'm the only one that can take responsibility for my life and the people that are in my life. Like it's me. It's all me. And when I decided that it's no one else's fault anymore, I took that finger of like blame, and it's like, oh, you're making my life hard. It's you. It's like nope. When I said no, it's Matt Gibson. Matt Gibson chooses the people that are in Matt Gibson's life. I'm not talking like Bob Dole here. So you remember that from back in the eight, or was it the eight when he was running for president? And he always talked in the first person, like Bob Dole says, whatever. He's a politician. Anyway,
No.
So yeah. Side note, but yeah, it's just like when I took responsibility for my own happiness, that's when my life changed. And it's not it wasn't a selfish thing. It was an epiphany. It was like, I am the only person that can make me happy. I'm a dad. I had some rough times in my life, and I wasn't doing a great job as a dad, and my kids, I've talked to them and stuff about, hey, I wish I would have done a better job at this. And, they forgive me, but it was hard for them, their mother and I, we argued a lot, and it was stressful, and so, like, with all that said, like, what I want for them is, I don't really need forgiveness or anything. I know what I did was not as good as it could have been, and I know now that what I can do to be a better dad to them in the present tense, right? But I would also like for them to not be imprisoned by blaming their life on their dad, or their upbringing, or their culture, or the world that they live in, or whatever it is. But it's a hard thing to do, because we feel entitled to be mad when stuff happens to us that isn't good for us, right? And so, what would you say about releasing anger and blame? How does that affect it seems like relevant to what we're talking about here.
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes back to the one word that you shared. You said responsibility. I come back to that again. Responsibility means your ability to respond, right? You ask yourself that question. Doesn't mean action, right? Something may happen, and maybe there's nothing you can do about it. Okay, so then if that's the case, then teach yourself to move on, because if there's truly nothing you can do about something, acceptance, until you come to a place of acceptance, it's going to keep playing in your head over and over again. Then eventually you come to a place of acceptance, and then you're like, why did I waste all that time doing that? But if I just accepted it, then that would have. So coming back to that concept again as a tool, that question, like, so you're walking down the street, right? Somebody comes and, I don't know, a bus hits a telephone pole, whatever. Nobody gets hurt, but the telephone pole falls over and hits a building. Is that your responsibility? Think about it for a second.
If you decide it is, it is.
Based on the definition of responsibility, is it your responsibility?
Definitely not.
Definitely not. So actually, the answer is yes.
Okay.
Because by definition, responsibility means the ability to respond. Do you have the ability to respond? Yes, you do. You can choose to do something about it, or you can choose to do nothing. It's not action.
That's beautiful.
That's a really key tool to keep in your back pocket, because
that is cool. I've never heard that before. That's brilliant.
And that goes deep. I know that sounds so simple, but if you just keep that tool in your back pocket and just remember, responsibility means the ability to respond, and ask yourself, do you have the ability to respond? Doesn't mean action. Again, I want to be very clear about that. Doesn't mean action. It just means managing the internal, right? Do you have the ability to respond? Yes, if you do choose not to take action, okay, great. Accept that and continue on. Great. If you choose to take action, then that's on you. Just like you said, right? I'm not putting it out to the world. I'm putting it on me.
Well, sometimes it's hard. Like, I'm on the other side of the fence. I want to put out everyone else's fires for them. Like, I want to go in there and help everyone, and I get involved in stuff that probably is only that person's responsibility. But like, I tend to want to do that sometimes, and it gets me in like saturated schedule where I'm just miserable and angry. I'm like, man, I don't got any time for me. And, everyone else is getting all this help and I'm, not happy, and no one's thanking me or whatever we say to ourselves when we're like grumpy, but it's like, how do you, and this will be the last question because we're getting close to the end of the hour. But how do you like deal with that side of the fence where you're almost too helpful?
That is, for me in my journey, that is an inner jolt of when I feel something inside of me that says I'm stretching myself too thin, I just say no. And that comes back to like business, that comes back to artists and opportunities, right? Not every opportunity can be a yes or should be a yes, right? The power of no, right? If something's not aligned, don't just do something just to do it because it's the only opportunity there and you think that opportunity may never come again. If intuitively it doesn't feel right, say no. That's the key. And the reason why we spread ourselves too thin, right, is that comes back to what we talked about earlier, looking outwards rather than looking inwards. If we spend more time, right, not just you, anyone, right, if we spend more time looking inwards, then we understand where our boundaries are. And we understand what we can do and what we can't do. And that we'll always try our best. Because like yourself, I'm a very giving person, right? And I've definitely been there. I've definitely spread myself too thin, trying to help out this, help that out. And, because I've a big heart, I care about people. I care about humanity. Like I want to see people do well. Like, I'm not one of those people that like are looking at somebody successful and are like, why are they successful? I'm like, wow, that's amazing. Like, cool. And if I can help somebody get there, fantastic. And it's also important to maintain your own inner balance, because if you give, then you leave nothing for yourself and then you can't help anybody. Then you just self-destruct. So the looking inwards, that's going to allow you to say no more often.
Yep. It's learning that self-discipline to manage your own spirit and your body, really, like your own person. And it does take practice, and it takes a lot of failure. Like, it's a lot of failure. Practice. And but you know what? Like, that's why it's important that we all kind of look out for each other. And especially in the music community, we're all in this together. We're all in the barrel of gerbils with the Cheeto. Honestly, we all have either been in there or we're getting out of it, or we're, whatever it is, that kind of old way of doing things. And this is the only way to be a musician, But like, we really, a lot of people are suffering. It's hard. So definitely Kingdom of Rock. If you need help, go talk to somebody. And if you can't find anybody, just hit us up and we'll talk to you. Like we're not like we're not a mental health agency or spiritual health agency, but we're humans and we do care about you guys. So we know it's tough out there. So let us know if you're struggling. We'd love to hear from you. And Mike, I want to thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Everybody where they can find more out about you.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, just hop online, Instagram, website, whatever, just Mike Scala. That's it. Feel free to reach out. Yeah. If you do need help in terms of tools or like, some maybe specific things, if you're struggling with something, I'm not a mental health expert, but, have had an opportunity to amass some tools just from having to use them. Right. I mean, to keep grounded. So, I hope that this was helpful. I hope that this was on topic in some way, and I know it was a bit alternative, probably a bit outside of what maybe is normal on Kingdom of Rock, but, I don't know. I guess I'm just a weird dude. I don't know.
Everybody loves learning. And I think, one thing we want to do here with Kingdom of Rock, our main kind of mantra is helping you get smarter at music, tech, and business. But really, the human condition is the hardest of all of those hurdles, you know, and we kind of imply that it's there because we're all human beings, but you know, it's being human and having self-discipline, self-control in your life is it's kind of a group effort. I mean, it's a single effort, but like we got to be there to support each other, because sometimes when we fail, it really sucks, and we don't know what to do.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's it. I mean, yeah, look, you need support. I mean, I said it earlier, right? Like, there's no way I could have done what I did without support of really great friends and, you know, good mentors and people that saw whatever vision I had out in the world, you know, both musically, business-wise, and, you know, philanthropically. Like, I had to create my own world because I was different in this whole scheme of things, and we're all different in our own way, right? You just have to find a way to make it work for you, and I think there's always a way to make it work for you. So and I don't use the word different in the way that like, oh, I'm whatever than anyone else. It's just my journey internally didn't fit in the normal music industry sense. Like, you know, artist plays shows, artist gets to a certain level, you know, does all the things. It was a very, very alternative route. So I had to find a way to make my world work, you know.
Found bag of Cheetos, bro. I mean, really, it's kind of what it is. You built your own platform essentially, and honestly, that makes you a better artist, I think, because it's one thing to follow the yellow brick road and try to do what everyone else is doing at a successful level. You know, it's good to, you know, the true artists are the ones that they don't really follow the beaten path sometimes, you know, and I respect you for that, for doing it. And I thank you again for being on the show. Is it MikeScala.com?
Yeah, that's it, you know. And then you could find all the other things if you're interested on the impact side or the business side or whatever it is. It all leads to one thing leads to the other. So it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me,
Mike, and rock out.
All right, peace.